allow them to feel comfortable that their story could be heard, but yet it wouldn't kind of go back to be a reflection on them. And I think it's kind of sad, too. Even if we may disagree on why weird things, anomalous things happen, to just kind of ignore that they can happen, and they don't happen all the time, but they can happen in some situations, I think isn't beneficial for the therapy, too.
Yeah. Well, I suppose part of it is because historically the reports of anomalous experiences were considered a symptom of psychosis.
I would say historically, and I think modern too. If you have someone who tells you that they are seeing spirits in their home, or they're hearing voices that aren't there, it is natural for all of us trained in the field. I mean, even with your background, when you saw clients, you had to make sure what's magical thinking, a hallucinatory experience, and what might be something else. And I think there's still that stigma, even though I found in my research that the majority of people, and many studies have found, have, even if it's just one time, an auditory hallucination or a visual hallucination. So if the majority of people, even just one time, are having that, then this whole idea that if that happens at all, that it's automatically a sign of mental illness, psychopathology, I think that's a knee-jerk reaction that I was guilty of doing too. But I think that can sometimes harm our clients to automatically go in with the idea that if they're having these experiences, it has to be something in a negative.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because a person who is psychotic normally shows a whole range of symptoms and is pretty easily identifiable. If a person is simply reporting paranormal experience and doesn't have many of the other symptoms associated with psychosis, it's probably more reasonable to suggest that they are a normally functioning human being who's having an anomalous or a paranormal experience.
Mm-hmm. And I'm wondering if down the road there can be if we have to diagnose. I'm not big on diagnosing, but if we have to, grappling with anomalous experiences rather than making the client or whoever's experiencing them kind of the source of everything in a negative light. So whether we believe in something or not, if our client is exhibiting something, experiencing something, and everything else seems fine, I think sometimes we ought not rush into judgment. And that's what's funny to me is the therapists who've had experiences happen within a session tend to have their view of things slightly changed, because now that they're having something weird happen, they can have a lot more empathy for people they talk to, or just not be so dismissive of things they've heard.
In fact, therapists are just as prone to have anomalous or paranormal experiences as clients.
Oh, yes, absolutely. In their own personal life, something may happen, but again, it may be the kiss of death professionally to state that you've had that, because we're expected, I'm saying we as therapists are expected to be rational and scientific, and in our field as helpers, if we're talking about, having ESP happen or things like that, our credibility, it kind of shrinks down. But at the same time, if the majority of people, and study after study have shown this, at least half the population, and most studies say, have had these experiences. So why should our credibility naturally drop if one of us states that they've had something weird happen? But that's kind of the duality we're operating in here.
Well, there's been a tendency amongst the profession of psychology in general, not just psychotherapy, but academic and research psychology, to act as if the 150-year history of research into the paranormal, which was initiated by people like William James, the founder of modern American psychology, to act as if that literature doesn't exist.
Right, yeah, and it's not there. And honestly, I didn't know much about it either. Mm-hmm. It's only been fairly recently that I've dug into it and found that, these things were being reported. And what's surprising to me is a lot of people don't know when psychology came about, the second International Congress on Psychology, half of the panelists, the presenters, were involved in psychical research. And for the second and the third one, I think by the time the fourth Congress came around, things had started to change. But they were present, and these things were discussed. And some people credit early psychical researchers like William James and many others as tightening up research protocols that psychology didn't have before. Mm-hmm. So we just, I think, want to put on these blinders and say that stuff never existed, when there has been a history of discomfort with this phenomena happening, not just in general, but even in therapy sessions. Yep. Sigmund Freud, even though publicly he was an atheist, he didn't want anything involving weird occult things coming into psychoanalysis, because he felt that would undermine psychoanalysis as a science. But yet, privately, we find out he was very interested in ESP, telepathy experiments. And psychoanalysis, what is known as thought transference, is a jargon way to say telepathy, but he wanted to kind of disguise it because it was happening so much in the sessions that they came up with this almost a scientific sounding thing that he felt that had it rooted in materialistic, but yet he could find no cause for it. He couldn't hide that it was happening, so he kind of rebranded it so it'd be easier for some of his disciples to take. As a matter of fact, I found out that Sigmund Freud was a member of the Society for Psychical Research. I never learned that in my undergraduate or graduate classes about Freud. And he had a series of experiments he did with Anna, his daughter, and Sándor Ferenczi in Hungary. They interacted about experiments, but Freud was always keep it quiet. So he was publicly saying one thing, but privately doing something else.
Well, there's a lot to be said about the history of great psychologists interested in this field, but I'd like to